based on this new perception of self-care and really getting the most out of it, I want to focus back on the emotions a little bit more and to kind of go over what an emotional imbalance is. Uh, Emotional imbalance is essentially the switching of reality for personal perception, in which the person comes out with a conclusion that does not kind of resonate with the experience itself. Meaning that if I feel that I lack confidence and go into a situation where it requires confidence, but then after that experience, don't see that I am more confident, this is a big problem. This essentially leads to the thinking that there is something being repressed, that being an emotion. And the main two things that I've found that often kind of correlate with repressed emotion are one that's more kind of external towards and out into the world, which is anger, and the second, which is fear, more internal, more within oneself. Now, either or, if somebody is fearful or somebody is angry, we know that there are some repressed emotions for sure. And this always leads to, or is a secondary expression of, there being an emotional imbalance, right? And it would be mistaken if you were to think that um, being angry is the emotion itself that is being repressed. It is the emotion that's being expressed. And ultimately, fear is also the emotion that's being expressed. So this means that the body has, or the mind has, the capability of switching the original emotion to something else so that it is more, let's say, mentally safe at the time to deal with that in the crisis. Always in a crisis, a high stretch situation, we're not going to have the time to kind of rest and digest. We're going to be in flight or fight, in the sense that we're not going to be able to appropriately take in what is happening to us as we're going through it. This takes a lot of skill and practice to be able to do, and generally, if we're in a crisis, that's not going to be the first reaction we have. Out of this, we generally come up with some kind of coping mechanism, which is the compensation, meaning that the mind is going to come up with its best solution based on all the knowledge it currently has to solve the problem. Often, we will see this in an over-exaggeration of some sort. Often we kind of praise people for this over-exaggeration, which we see as a good thing, because anger is very good for getting a lot of stuff done. It's a highly strong, powerful motivator to do things. So you're going to have the most business-oriented people with this kind of thing. Maybe subconsciously, they're not really paying attention to it, but it's definitely a primary motivator. And also people in the sense of fearfulness, they're going to be amazing for defense mechanisms, right? So we essentially have a sword and a shield. The person that's more fearful is going to think of the things that can go wrong. What are those things? And how are we going to solve those things? And in that way of kind of making these things that are very defensive in nature, we block out experience. And also when we take things on that are very aggressive in nature, kind of taking on the challenge like the sword, we also block out the experience because we know what's going to happen and we're going to take it on. When you take on life, you miss the experience of life. When you defend against life, you miss the experience of life. These are the kind of primary understandings to this emotional aspect of self-care and the new direction we're going in. Now, that all being said, you might think that a lot of people have these things, right? This is true, they do. And this is why incidences of health challenges are very high, right? If you live a lifestyle that supports this blocking out of reality, then nature does not like that because you are not being your full self and you're not being able to express yourself. And if you are you, but not being you, this is going to cause cognitive dissonance. It's going to cause something that the body is going to try to shake you out of, right? So then you learn something about yourself that you think is terrible. Oh my gosh, I thought I was always the kindest person. However, in my way of trying to be kind, I've hurt many people, right? This is because there is that dissonance of what's actually happening and what you're doing. You're over identifying with the actions you're doing and not particularly the kind of emotional atmosphere that's happening around you. This is absolutely normal. Everybody does that because we're dealing with challenges. However, we want to regulate this thing. Why would you not want to feel yourself or be yourself throughout the process of your whole life? I mean, ultimately, I might not know what the purpose of life is, but I'm going to say to experience it to the fullest in a way that's productive is going to be a pretty high benefit. And maybe when we get there, we'll figure out what it's all about. Who knows? We're not there yet. But it's better to always look at the potential of what we're capable of as opposed to pretending like that is not something that should happen. So in this way, we're also going to focus on these things. I find emotions were very hard to kind of understand out of the three: mental, physical, and emotional. And I think you do have to understand the first two and make your way back to one. Or if you're a specialist in any kind of health field, you will know your field the best. From there, find its weaknesses. From there, explore new avenues. Once you explore a certain amount, you'll start to see that it comes back to the emotional aspect of things. And more importantly, you going on that journey allows you to equate the experience to the action and not just point out the action itself. It's very easy to tell somebody to do something, very hard for them to do it, and even harder generally for the person to do it himself, knowing that we often give the best advice to other people that we should take. So I wanted to really clarify the understanding of the model that we're going to be using to take on the emotional challenge. The reason why I find self-care to be so powerful in this aspect is self-care by its nature is something that is already in the subconscious, meaning that we don't particularly know what self-care is. And often people will rise to the occasion. I know exactly what self-care is. It's taking care of yourself. In further investigation, I say, so what is that? They respond with some kind of action. And I say, well, who taught you that? Is that the right way to do it? They don't know. Is that the perfect thing for you? Who knows? In fact, is the way that you've lived in your life might be great, and we want to work with that wisdom, but what are the shortcomings of that? Are you a highly stressed, anxious, overly motivated, angry individual who's fearful? Possibly. And if that's the case, we know that the direction that we're currently going is not the one we want to continue. Let's learn from that and move in the opposite direction in the way of kind of rounding out the scenario. I think often we think that moving forward is what it's all about, but it seems to be more staying still, reflecting on one's life to bring about the rounding out, the being okay being still, the being okay being yourself. And that is not particularly done by moving forward or backward, but it's done by appreciation and acknowledgement of who you were, who you are, and who you want to be, and finding the mechanisms to become that thing, that person, or achieve that thing that's going to bring you there. So I think that's about all I want to share on that topic, but I did want to make it clear of the pertinence of self-care because it's relegated to the subconscious. And again, we know that emotions that are repressed are also in the subconscious, and we know again that the subconscious is always trying to be expressed, and how it does that is by symbolism and by what I'd say is kind of body expression, in the sense of the term, that guy carries all the weight on his shoulders. What does that truly mean? Is there wisdom in that? Can somebody be so stressed that they're lifting their shoulders? Yes. But where does that actually come from? Is it an emotional expression? Yes. How does one address that? It's a product of a way of thinking, which is often linked to a way of living life, which is often linked to kind of a moral misperception of what it means to kind of take life on. Now, that all being said, I hope that was insightful as always. Always you can leave your questions, concerns, and insights. If you are a professional in these categories and you hear what I'm saying and it resonates with you, I'd be happy to talk a little bit more with you and build on this model. All right, thank you very much.